What up, flockers? In this video, we're gonna review the Mexican red-crowned Amazon, which is an amazing parrot because there's just so much parrot in a neatly wrapped package, which is why Amazon parrots are incredibly popular. I kind of best describe Amazons, and especially the Mexican red-crowned Amazon, as just like a parrot that has a little bit of everything. It's gonna have a bunch of the good from all kinds of different parrots, as well as some of the bad that you're gonna have to watch out for. But I would say it's not exactly crazy in either direction, it's just a pretty overall well-rounded parrot. Now this parrot, you may know it by a couple other names. They're also known as the red-headed Amazon or the green-cheeked Amazon. And these amazing parrots come to us from the northeastern parts of Mexico. Now these amazing parrots get their name from their iconic red crest right here at the very top. That gives them a really interesting contrast with their all green body. Now while there's like little bits of yellow, especially when it kind of grows up, and also a little bit of blue right at the top of the head, it's overall just a very green tropical looking parrot with a really cool red crown to it. Now these cool parrots come to us from the northeastern parts of Mexico, and in captivity you can expect these birds to have about like a 50-year lifespan. So they're definitely going to be a time commitment, more so than other medium-sized birds. Now the interesting thing about these birds in the wild is they are currently an endangered species with only just a few thousand left in the wild. And this is largely due to things like the illegal pet trade in Mexico, as well as just deforestation, which is why if you ever get a parrot, make sure that it was actually bred by a professional breeder. However, on the upside, there have been feral flocks that have been spawning in several states here in America, such as Texas and Florida, and even right here in Southern California. I've actually seen some of these flocks myself, where there was a pet store that was on fire, and the pet store owner released all the birds that he had in order to save their lives. And in that flock of that pet store, there was a small amount of Amazons that managed to adapt here in California and have been spreading its population all over the place. So the thing is these birds are extremely hardy and extremely intelligent to be able to be adapting to foreign environments, which is what's going to make owning one of these parrots so interesting. Now this baby red-crowned Amazon comes to us from Omar's Exotic Birds, which is my go-to pet store here in Southern California, and where I got the majority of my flock. You see, they actually let their birds out like a petting zoo, so as babies these birds learn that humans and birds can actually get along as one flock, and I think that's really important to having very tame parrots. And now while they did not sponsor this video, they were kind enough to loan me this parrot for this review, so for that guys, thank you so much. Now the main question is this parrot going to be the right parrot for you? And to break this down, we have our 6 categories, which are going to be handleability, quietness, talking ability, care, hardiness, and upfront costs. Now if you are a huge fan of Amazons or red-crowned Amazons, please make sure you hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm to help spread the love of Amazons everywhere, so more people can learn and be educated about this amazing species of parrot. And my goal with this channel is to review every single parrot in existence, seriously. So if you want to support my mission or follow along, because you're not going to want to miss any videos, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. And with that aside, let's go ahead and get started. So first up is going to be handleability, and for that I give the red-crowned Amazon a score of 3 out of 5. Amazons are really popular because they are so extremely affectionate. They are super cuddly. You can rough handle them and they enjoy it. They're super sweet birds. And they're also just a lot of fun to be around. I mean, they have just the right amount of energy that they're kind of all over the place and being silly and a little mischievous, but still a little more handleable. And now for red-crowned Amazons in specifically, they're a little bit more mild in temperament compared to some other Amazons. Not by too much, but it is a little noticeable. So being a little bit less energy, but still a really big bird personality that just people just know and love. It's one of the main reasons as to why these birds are so popular. But it also comes with a little bit of a caveat. Amazons can also somewhat be kind of bossy parrots, and they'll kind of push their way around at times. And while Amazons can end up being great family birds, they can also be a little prone to being one-person birds if not enough people are handling them all the the time. So if you have a family, you do want to make sure that everyone's spending time with this bird. They are very flock-minded parrots. In the wild, they're always staying together in groups. They're not really independent compared to some other birds, but you do want to make sure that your Amazon is going to be heavily involved in your human flock, because if that's not the case, they might get too attached to just a person and you're not going to have like a fun pet for everybody else. The other thing about this bird is when you buy them as a baby, sometimes they can go through a bluffing stage in their adolescence. Now, if you don't know what bluffing is, it's basically your bird turns into a really nasty teenager, and you're going to have to work through that, because if you don't work through that little teenage phase, they can end up being really nippy and aggressive birds for the rest of their lives, and then they would just make absolutely horrible pets. But I would say, compared to say maybe something like an Indian ringneck or something, their bluffing phase is not as common, and if you know how to read their body language, it's a little bit easier to work through, but that's kind of subjective. But I would definitely say with these Amazons, just kind of having somewhat of a bossy personality sometimes, and then these like bluffing phases and stuff, you do want to really learn how to read their body language. And as such, I don't think Amazons make good beginner birds, despite just how friendly and cuddly they are. And then aside from that, they do have mood swings, and there's gonna be times where your Amazon just wants some alone time, or he just doesn't want to spend time with you, or they just are in a really pissy mood and they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Now, whereas its mood swings aren't gonna be as crazy as say something like a cockatoo, it's still something you need to watch out for. On top of that, these birds are really intelligent and they're very curious. They will get themselves in trouble. They're gonna be exploring your house, chewing furniture you don't want chewed. Everything's a chew toy. So with these birds, you want to always make sure that you are supervising your Amazon when they are outside of their cage, or they will end up hurting themselves. So definitely keep that in mind. Next up on this list is going to be quietness, and for quietness, I give this bird a score of 2 out of 5. Amazons are not quiet birds. They are going to be very, very noisy. But that's partly the appeal, because they're going to be talking and screaming and like mimicking sounds all the time. And in fact, this bird is probably going to be your alarm clock, because especially with Amazons, they're going to be vocalizing at least twice a day. Normally first thing in the morning at sunrise, and then again during the evening when in the wild they're kind of calling all the other flock members to gather and go home. And as such, I strongly do not recommend these birds for apartments, because guess what? Everyone's gonna know you have a parrot. Now, they're not as loud as a cockatoo, which is why they're not like a 1, but they're definitely going to be a very noisy parrot. But you probably expect that because of the very next category, which is going to be talking ability, to which this bird has a 4. Amazons are really great talkers. That's part of the appeal. They're just that big bird personality that's like super fun, and they talk really, really well. They're gonna be learning a lot of phrases, sound effects, car alarms, beeps, your phone ringtone. They are just talkers, and they will be talking up a storm. And they're gonna be talking very, very frequently, especially if you get a male, as generally the males are the ones that are talkers. If you get a female, probably not as much. But overall, Amazons are just insane talkers. They just have a really good mimicry sounds and sound quality to it. So if you want a talking bird that's very tropical looking, Amazons are a really great choice. Next up on this list is going to be care. And for care, I give the red-crowned Amazon a score of 3 out of 5. Now, overall, caring for an Amazon isn't too different than other parrots, which is going to be you want to make sure that you put them on a pellet diet and then occasionally the fruits and veggies about every other day. But something I really want to stress is just how important the pellet diet's going to be, especially for Amazons, because Amazons are going to be prone to fatty liver disease. These birds in the captivity aren't going to be able to burn that much energy as compared to the wild, and they are very, very prone to getting overweight and getting fatty liver disease because of being an all-seed diet. So you never want to do an all-seed diet. Feeding seeds is like feeding your parrot cheeseburgers every single day, and especially with Amazons that are very prone to getting overweight, you really want to avoid that. So I cannot stress how important an all pellet diet is going to be for this bird. Now, while Amazons are not as hyper as cockatoos, they still are going to need a lot of exercise and a lot of space to help stay healthy. So as such, I strongly recommend you get the biggest cage you possibly can. And if you don't, you definitely want to keep this bird outside of the cage as much as possible. So I would also recommend getting things like play sets around your house just to give this bird different places to play around and climb all over this place. Also, just being a very flock-minded bird, make sure that you keep the cage where there's heavy foot traffic in your house, as this bird is going to want to constantly feel like it's part of the flock with you and your entire family. I would also make sure that you want to spend minimum like at least a couple hours a day, but most likely more, like 3-4 hours a day, or even more on top of that. You want to spend as much time as you can with this parrot because they are just so big personality. They're going to be another child in your family you're going to have to constantly look after, and they're going to be pretty hyper and active because if you don't keep up with the attention with these birds, they can end up turning aggressive, and they have some pretty good beaks that you don't want to be biting in, because if they turn into a very nippy bird, it's not going to be fun. Let me just make that clear. So make sure that you keep up maintaining this bird with a lot of attention. I mean, you need to be showering your bird with attention. And especially if it's going through that bluffing phase, that teenage phase, you gotta double down on that, because if you don't, you're not gonna have a very fun pet. Next up on this list is gonna be Hardiness. And for Hardiness, I give this bird a score of 4 out of 5. Amazons are pretty hardy birds. They can actually acclimate pretty well to different weather despite being tropical birds, and that's partly why these birds are kind of popping up all over America. And also, in my opinion, they are just a really good solid medium size, so I'm not concerned about crushing. If you have grabby children or kids who are a little rough with birds, these birds can probably take it and they might even enjoy it. I'm actually going to be more concerned about the kid, making sure that your child knows how to read parrot body language so they know when enough is enough. It's overall really good size and build. Next up on this list is going to be Upfront Costs. And for Upfront Costs, I give this bird a score of 1 out of 5. Amazons are pretty pricey birds, and this is going to cost you around $4,000 to $5,000, maybe even more. So this bird is going to be a substantial investment, but then it doesn't stop there. Just being a very active bird, I strongly recommend you get a very nice, large, pricey cage, so the bird actually has space to like burn energy and help prevent getting overweight, because that's very important with Amazons. I would also recommend spending another like few $100s, like $400 or $500, getting play sets around your house, just so your bird has different areas to kind of go around, stay stimulated, move around and burn energy. It's going to be really important with these. And then these birds are pretty destructive, so you're going to want to invest into definitely a good amount of toys, and you're going to be going through that quite a bit. So this bird's going to be a pretty big investment right off the bat. And of course, just being a larger medium bird, they're going to be a little pricey in terms of just the amount of food they eat compared to like a smaller bird. But this is definitely a bird I do not recommend going cheap on, and like really investing and making sure that this bird is as well taken care of as possible. So with all this being said comes our final score. And for our final score, I give the red-crowned Amazon a score of 2.8 out of 5. They are overall just a big bird personality that is just a little bit of everything. I kind of see the extravagant funness of like a cockatoo, the noisiness of the conure, the rough handling of a macaw, and the bluffing fidgetiness of a parakeet. Just kind of all of that mixed into one bird. So you really can't complain, and that's where I think Amazons are just great defaults if you really can't decide on something you want. But of course, as always, I always recommend you go to a pet store first to interact with a variety of birds so you actually find out what it is you truly want. But Amazons could be something to look into and may be the right bird for you. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.